There is some backlash in Australia this week over a visit to the continent by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. This time, the Sussexes say their visit is privately funded. But there have been some complaints from Australians about the added security costs and appearance fees for what they say is a trip all about promoting the Sussex brand.
Day 2. And if you thought this story had already shown you everything it had, you were wrong. What is unfolding in Australia right now is no longer a story about a royal-adjacent couple trying to stay relevant. It is something sharper than that, something more damning than that, and by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why the reaction to this tour is not just criticism, it is recognition. The world is finally seeing what we have been watching for years. If you missed Day 1, it is on the channel. Go watch it, because Day 1 set the table. Day 2 is where the meal turns. What started as an awkward, slightly off-balance celebrity visit has now escalated into something that cannot be dismissed, cannot be explained away, and cannot be spun.
And whether or not they were overspending their annual income, which is why they'd come to Australia in order to beef it up with paid appearances. It's amazingly embarrassing to be labeled as literally royal grifters.
The backlash is no longer murmuring in the background. It is loud, it is specific, and it is growing by the hour. The accusations of cashing in, of using grief, using children, using every available emotional lever to generate revenue and relevance, are no longer fringe opinions. They are the dominant conversation, and the tone of that conversation has shifted dramatically. Day 2 opens at Mission Whitton Oval in Melbourne, and from the very first moment, it captures everything that makes this tour so impossible to look away from. Because two completely different realities are unfolding simultaneously, and the collision between them tells you everything you need to know. On one side of the oval, children are gathered in a burst of color and noise, watching the Wiggles perform. Pure, uncomplicated joy, exactly what it looks like on the surface.
We have to fund it. Yes, us hard-working taxpayers have to pay for them to have police, even though this is a private tour.
And just meters away from that, Harry is on the field kicking an Australian rules football, laughing with AFL players, performing casualness for the cameras, while internally preparing to pivot into one of the most emotionally loaded conversations of the entire trip. Someone in the crowd even noted the joke about giving him a kid's football instead of a real one. He apparently accepted it graciously. The optics were light, the atmosphere was festive, and then the cameras repositioned, the crowd settled, and Harry sat down for a public question and answer session on men's mental health. The mood shifted instantly. What followed was not a polished, rehearsed statement about wellness initiatives. It was personal, almost uncomfortably so. Harry began speaking about the early days of fatherhood as a period of emotional disorientation, disconnection, confusion, an identity he did not know how to inhabit. He spoke about therapy not as a footnote, but as a lifeline. He described unresolved experiences from his past that required active reconstruction to process. And all of this, every word of it, was delivered in the same physical space where minutes earlier, families had been clapping along to children's entertainment. That collision of tone was not designed. That is what made it surreal. Children dancing on one side, trauma disclosure on the other, and Harry moving between both with a fluency that should, at some point, make you ask a question. Because when emotional vulnerability becomes a scheduled stop on a ticketed tour, what exactly are we witnessing? When personal pain is delivered to a live audience in an entertainment venue between football drills and the Wiggles. Is that healing, or is that content? Harry continued. He reflected on fatherhood, on how emotional awareness had been entirely absent from his own upbringing. He referenced the household of King Charles III, the legacy of Princess Diana, the silence that surrounded certain conversations in that world. He described a childhood where emotional dialogue simply did not exist. Cameras rolled, journalists held position. Some in the audience leaned in, others looked uncertain, unsure whether to treat what they were hearing as a therapy session or a press event, because by this point, the line between those two things had completely dissolved. The setting refused to hold a single emotional register. It kept lurching, from light to heavy, from playful to raw, from football field to therapy room, and that instability became the defining quality of Harry's entire presence on Day 2. Later in the same event cycle, he went further. He spoke about the emotional imbalance that descends on couples after a child is born, how one partner can be consumed by the weight of domestic responsibility while the other struggles with distance, external pressure, and an internal life they have not yet learned to articulate. His tone was reflective, considered. Grounded, he kept saying, in personal experience. But outside that room, the public response was moving in a completely different direction. Because while Harry performed emotional vulnerability for a live audience, the broader criticism of the tour was reaching a new intensity. The phrase appearing repeatedly in commentary, faux royale tour.
Allegedly, she's also selling the outfits that she wore on the trip, which I think their finances are in trouble because apparently she's making a cut of the outfit she wore. You know, you can buy her top or you can buy her pants, and she's partnered with some
Was no longer a throwaway line. It was a verdict. A performance-based structure masquerading as something charitable, something meaningful, something royal in spirit, if not in name. And that framing became impossible to ignore once you looked at what was happening on Meghan's side of the tour. Because while Harry was delivering trauma disclosures to a Melbourne crowd, Meghan was operating in an entirely different world. One built around branding, luxury positioning, and monetized aspiration. Her presence had become anchored to a high-end wellness retreat experience, marketed as an immersive weekend of connection, growth, and personal transformation. And the moment the pricing structure became public, it didn't just raise eyebrows. It confirmed everything. The entry price alone should have told you everything. Several $1,000s to get through the door. And that was just the beginning. Premium tiers stacked on top of that, each one unlocking a little more access, a little more proximity, culminating in the ultimate prize, a personal photo with Meghan herself. Let that land for a moment. Not a charity auction, not a fundraiser, a tiered commercial product where the top shelf item was Meghan Markle's physical presence, priced, packaged, and sold like a luxury amenity. This was not a wellness retreat. This was exclusivity as a revenue model, and the moment that pricing structure hit public consciousness, the conversation stopped being about connection or empowerment or any of the language used to market it. It became about what was actually being sold, which was access to Meghan, scaled by how much you were willing to pay for it. Critics didn't need to spin this. The structure spoke for itself, and if you thought that was the ceiling of what was being monetized during this tour, you weren't paying close enough attention, because Meghan's fashion presence was operating on an entirely separate commercial track. One that ran silently in the background of every single public appearance she made. Through her involvement with an AI-powered fashion platform, every outfit she wore was being cataloged, broken down, and made shoppable in real time. Dress, designer, price, purchase link, all of it processed and lived before the cameras had even moved on. Her Melbourne hospital appearance, a moment ostensibly about visiting patients, about service, about showing up for others, was simultaneously being fed into a digital pipeline that converted her clothing into a live product catalog. You weren't just watching Meghan walk through a hospital ward, you were being invited to shop the look. That is not fashion coverage, that is infrastructure, and the distinction matters enormously. Because Meghan is not simply a celebrity who happens to be photographed in expensive clothes that fans then try to identify. She is an investor in the platform doing the identifying. Her visibility and her financial interest in monetizing that visibility are the same thing. Every public appearance during this tour was not just a moment. It was an asset being actively deployed through a commercial system she has a stake in. That is the detail that reframes everything. That is the detail that cannot be walked back. So hold both images in your mind at the same time. Harry, in a semi-formal setting, talking about fatherhood trauma, emotional wounds, the internal cost of military service, and Meghan simultaneously anchoring a tiered access luxury wellness event and functioning as the centerpiece of a live shoppable fashion ecosystem she is financially invested in. These are not two people on the same tour with slightly different schedules. These are two entirely different operations running under the same branding. And that contrast is not subtle. It does not require interpretation. It is structural. One half of this couple is performing emotional depth and public service. The other half is building a monetization architecture around her own image, in real time, during the same trip, under the same tour banner. The gap between those two narratives does not close as day two continues. It widens. It becomes impossible to look away from. Supporters tried to reframe it, of course. They called it modern entrepreneurship. They called it a public figure taking control of her own image and building something on her own terms. But here is the problem with that framing. And you already know what it is. The entire foundation of Meghan's public profile, the reason anyone is paying thousands of dollars to stand near her, the reason her outfits generate instant commercial traffic, is the royal identity she claimed to be escaping. Strip away the Duchess title, remove the palace chapters from the memoir, erase the Netflix documentary and the Oprah interview, and there is no platform. There is no premium tier. There is no shoppable moment. She did not build something independent. She liquidated something borrowed. A royal commentator said it plainly during the broader coverage that Meghan's commercial direction represented a new model for generating income, one where her public role had expanded beyond appearances into full business ecosystems built around her identity. That is a diplomatic way of saying what this audience already understands. Every appearance is a transaction. Every tour stop is a content asset. Every emotional moment that Harry performs in public creates the credibility backdrop against which Meghan's brand commands its premium. And as day 2 of the Australian visit moves toward its close, that dynamic is no longer a background noise. It is the story. It is the defining tension that every commentator, every critic, and, whether they admit it or not, every supporter can see clearly now. The architecture has been exposed, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The retreat, the fashion monetization platform, the curated wellness identity, the carefully staged public appearances. These are not separate initiatives running in parallel to the tour. They are the tour. They are the infrastructure. The charity events and the emotional speeches are the front of house, and behind every single one of them is a revenue architecture that was built before the plane ever touched down in Sydney. That is not a coincidence. That is a strategy. And the public sees it. That is what the petitions represent. That is what the taxpayer outrage represents. Tens of thousands of signatures from ordinary people who looked at the policing costs, looked at the public resources being deployed, looked at the premium tier access packages starting in the thousands, and said, loudly, formally, on the record, no, we are not funding this. We are not subsidizing a celebrity monetization model wrapped in the language of mental health and humanitarian concern. That sentiment does not emerge from nowhere. It emerges from pattern recognition. It emerges from people who have been watching this couple long enough to know exactly what they are looking at. Every appearance Meghan makes now carries that weight. Walking into a venue is not just walking into a venue. Being photographed is not just being photographed. Every image feeds the fashion platform. Every curated outfit is a real-time transaction waiting to happen. Every moment of visibility is simultaneously a moment of conversion. Attention transformed into commerce, proximity transformed into product. The audience at these events is not just an audience. They are, functionally, a customer base. And Meghan knows it. That is the point. This is where the Diana comparison doesn't just fail, it collapses entirely. Because Diana's public engagements were not the front end of a luxury retreat business. Diana sitting with AIDS patients, Diana walking through landmine fields, Diana in the hospitals, that was not a content pipeline feeding a fashion monetization interface. The distinction is not subtle, it is total. And the fact that Harry continues to invoke that legacy, continues to position himself as the emotional heir to his mother's humanitarian mission, while standing inside this commercial structure, that is not just a contradiction, that is an exploitation of her memory, of her image, of everything she actually stood for. Harry's vulnerability messaging, the therapy, the generational trauma, the open discussions about his childhood in the house of King Charles, lands differently now. Not because the pain is necessarily false, but because of where it is being deployed. Emotional openness in service of genuine advocacy is one thing. Emotional openness as the soft-focused branding layer on top of a premium access celebrity commerce model is something else entirely. And the more Harry speaks about breaking cycles and confronting unresolved experiences, the more the contrast with the surrounding commercial structure becomes impossible to ignore. You cannot simultaneously claim the moral authority of Diana's legacy and operate a luxury proximity business. You do not get both. You do not get to stand at that intersection and pretend the contradiction isn't visible. By the time day 2 moves into its final hours, the narrative has fully shifted. Meghan is not a participant in this tour. She is its commercial engine. Every appearance, every outfit, every curated moment of wellness branding feeds a system that was running long before any charitable engagement was scheduled. And Harry is not the emotional heart of a humanitarian mission. He is the credibility shield, the name, the lineage, the grief, deployed to give the entire operation cover it has not earned and does not deserve. That is the architecture that has been exposed. And the Australian public, the British public, and every honest observer watching this unfold in real time is now asking the same question. Not with confusion, but with cold, settled clarity. How long did they think this would hold? And they don't have a good answer. Because one royal commentator has already said it plainly, describing what Meghan and Harry are building as a new way to generate income, framing their public appearances as the engine of a structured business ecosystem. That comment spread fast. It spread because it named something people were already seeing but hadn't heard said out loud in those terms. Presence is no longer just presence. It is product. It has always been product. The only thing that changed is that now, someone said so, and then there is Meghan's involvement with the AI-driven fashion platform One Off, which adds a layer to this story that should stop every single person watching in their tracks. Every outfit she wears during the Australian tour is immediately broken down. Dress, accessories, shoes, tagged with brand names, pricing, and direct purchasing links. Her Melbourne hospital appearance look alone is converted into a fully shoppable page within hours. Critics describe it as a walking commerce system, and that description is not hyperbole. It is a technical summary of what is actually happening. But here is the detail that makes this unforgivable. Meghan is not just featured within this platform, she is positioned as an investor in it, which means her image is not being monetized externally by some third party she has no control over. It is structurally integrated into a system she helped build, designed from the ground up to scale that monetization. This is not coincidence. This is architecture. And the backlash narrative seized on that immediately because control changes everything. It means every hospital visit, every carefully chosen outfit, every moment of apparent warmth in front of a camera is feeding a commercial pipeline she has a financial stake in. She is crawling back into public consciousness by doing every single thing she claimed traumatized her when she was inside the royal family, and doing it for profit. Meanwhile, Harry continues to work his side of the operation with the same emotional precision he has deployed for years. During one of the most widely discussed moments of the tour, he speaks about early fatherhood, describing emotional disconnection, the difficulty of adjusting to parenthood without proper guidance from his own upbringing, how therapy helped him prepare, how modern fatherhood demands a different kind of man. These comments are shared widely. Some call them honest, some call them wildly inappropriate for what is being framed as a diplomatic-style tour, but either way, they are doing exactly what they are designed to do, keeping Harry centered in a specific narrative, emotionally open, reflective, healing, relatably human. And the comparisons to Diana begin again, as they always do. Not identical in form, but identical in tone. The public vulnerability, the willingness to speak about inner life, the deliberate rejection of royal rigidity. That comparison is not accidental. It has never been accidental. The difference, and critics are now saying this loudly, is that Diana's emotional accessibility existed within a structure of genuine royal duty. What Harry and Meghan are doing now exists entirely outside official royal frameworks, yet still commands royal-level attention, royal-level security discussions, and royal-level public debate. They walked away from the institution. They kept everything the institution gave them, and they built a business model on the gap between those two facts. An opinion piece circulating during the tour calls it tone-deaf hawking by a couple estranged from reality. Supporters push back hard, insisting the Sussexes are simply building independent careers after a painful departure. But the fact that those two interpretations exist simultaneously, and that the language on both sides has become this extreme, tells you exactly how much damage has been done to public trust. Then come the financial optics, and they are impossible to ignore. Harry's appearances are tied to structured conferences and mental health events, some with ticketed entry priced from several hundred to several $1,000s, depending on access tier. Meghan's retreat and lifestyle ecosystem mirrors that structure in a different industry. Wellness and branding instead of formal conferences, but the architecture is the same. Premium access, tiered entry, your pain, their platform, your healing journey, their revenue stream. Harry takes the legacy lane, the veterans, the memorials, the wreath-laying, the imagery of a broken prince doing honorable work. That lane exists to launder the brand, to keep enough credibility in the account so that the withdrawals happening on Meghan's side of the operation don't trigger an overdraft. It is not separate from the commercial machine. It is load-bearing infrastructure for it. Meghan takes the monetization lane, the curated wellness experiences, the tiered access events, the lifestyle brand architecture dressed up as female empowerment. And she does it while Harry provides the emotional cover, because without his veteran ceremonies and his trauma narrative, her retreat ecosystem looks exactly like what it is. A premium product line with a royal origin story attached to the price tag. This is what they came to Australia to do. Not to heal, not to serve, not to give, to collect, to convert attention into revenue, goodwill into brand equity, and public sympathy into a paying customer base, all while maintaining just enough charitable framing to avoid the one label they cannot afford. By the time the final appearances concluded, The Australian visit had done exactly what it was designed to do. And exactly what the rest of the world had already seen coming. The fragmentation was not a side effect. The fragmentation was the strategy. 2 brands, 1 tour, maximum extraction. They didn't stumble into this. They built it. And now the whole world has seen the blueprint. If you've been watching this story unfold and you knew from the beginning how it would end, you belong here. Palace Leaks covers what the mainstream press is too polite to say plainly. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Because this story is far from over and every new chapter proves the point.